Hello and welcome to O3 Academy's Q2 2021 gathering. My name is Nick Maloof. I'm a training coordinator for O3 Solutions, just in case you've not met me yet. I oversee live training for implementations. I create and manage training material, and I maintain our software's documentation. And if you've ever reached out to our support channel before, you might have met me there as well, as I was helping you with an issue or just learning how to use O3. And so for those of you that have not attended one of our gatherings for the first time, there are three objectives that we strive for at O3 Academy. And the first one is to keep you up to date on training opportunities and the latest features that our development team has released. The second one being that, we want to help you network with some of the other training resources at O3. So keeping you in touch with some of the new resources that we've put out there. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is to get feedback on what you need. So a lot of our training material is demand driven, and we want to hear from you to make sure that we're putting out the right content. So for today's gathering, we will be kicking everything off with the safety moment, and then we will get into new feature highlights. After that, we'll be going over some tips and tricks on how you can use O3. And then we'll get into the theme for today's session, which is how you can manage actions with team boards, and more specifically, how you can use team boards to facilitate constraint management. And then to cap everything off, we will be going over O3's Toolbox and some new resources that we've added to it that you can use when training your users. And for today's safety moment, we are going to be talking about data breaches. So there's actually a few very simple and easy steps you can take, which you can remember with the RISK acronym. And just these few steps can actually really help you with your security and making sure that your valuable data or your sensitive data is not compromised. So the first one is going to be to run updates routinely on your phone and your computer. And the further you put these off, the more it makes you and your devices susceptible to being breached. The second one is going to be making sure you don't connect to Wi-Fi networks automatically. Always take that extra step and confirm the networks that you're connecting to. The reason why you want to do this is because hackers can use hotspots to get your sensitive data, and they can do this by spoofing Wi-Fi networks to lure people into connecting to them. For the third one, always be conscious of what sites you're visiting, especially those that prompt you to download material. And then also when you're browsing in public, you'll want to make sure that you're not accessing any sensitive material while you're out and about. Do that at home where you're connected to a Wi-Fi network that you're familiar with. And lastly, you'll want to routinely update your passwords, and you'll also want to make sure you avoid using the same passwords for multiple accounts. So because if the hacker gets access to one account of yours and you use the same password, well, they now have access to multiple accounts. Next, we'll be talking about some of the new features that our development team has released over the course of Q2. And today we're actually going to be focusing on IWP Gantt charts. And so the first feature that I wanted to let you know about today is adjusting dates via drag and drop. So initially, this is something you either had to do from the IWP's grid by clicking into the cell and typing, or you had to click into the IWP and then adjust the dates there. But now you can actually drag and drop these dates. You can either adjust the start date or finish date, depending on which side of the bar you click, or you can click in the middle of the bar and adjust both at the same time. And if you do have constraints that align due dates to the IWP's planned start date, there's no need to worry. O3 is automatically going to adjust those due dates after you've dragged and dropped the new start dates in the Gantt view. The next feature we're going to talk about is group by settings. So you can click on the group by symbol up in the top right, as you can see in this GIF. And what this lets you do is it lets you group all the IWPs on the left by that field. So you can see here, for example, I'm grouping my IWPs by discipline, but you can actually do this by any field that we offer for at the IWP level. So for CWPs, purposes, etc. And then our third new feature is going to be defining predecessors and successors. Again, this is something you initially had to do either by clicking into the IWP and doing it manually, or doing it via an import. But now you can just do this from the IWP Gantt view. So you'll navigate your cursor over to, the right or left side of the IWP, and then drag and drop the arrow to, whatever IWP you want to connect it to. And not only is it going to visualize this relationship in the Gantt view, it's also actually going to associate those two IWPs together. And so we're now going to jump into our O3 tips and tricks, and most of these are going to be targeted at using the model. So the first one is going to be hiding components in your model viewer, which is going to be that center part. And the way we'll do this is by clicking on the eye icon next to whatever work package we're interested in. So at this point, we've already created a work package by packaging components together. Now we want to isolate specific components in the model. So we'll do that by clicking on the eye icon, and that's going to gray out everything we're not interested in while maintaining the color for those that we do want to see. And this sets us up nicely for our next tip, which is going to be uploading model shots. Again, this is something you initially had to click into the IWP to do, but now you can do it from the model over there on the right side. So you can see there I click on the camera icon next to my IWP, and that's going to capture the model for us. And so we just saw how we can filter the center part of our screen, so the model itself. You can also filter the model browser as well, which is going to make navigating, that tree on the left-hand side a lot easier. So you can see here, I'm clicking on that cogwheel icon up at the top, going to IWP filters, and then specifying the filter that I want to apply. And so here I'm doing discipline equals INE. And once that's done, we're going to see the tree over on the left-hand side get a lot shorter. This is going to make it a lot easier finding the IWPs that are relevant to us in the model. And the use case here is, let's say I'm a work-face planner, my discipline is E&I. I'm not interested in all of those other work packages. And so I can make my life a lot easier by filtering all of these out. And after we apply those filters, we can save them as a new layout. So this means that, when I come back to the model, I'm not going to have to make those adjustments every single time. I can save it as a layout, and when I come back, I can choose my layout, and we're going to have all of those filters that we specified earlier. In addition to that, we can also share these with other team members. So if there are other team members that also only, are E&I is their only relevant discipline, for example, we can save the layout, share it with them, and they won't have to go through the process of filtering that stuff. It's already been done for them, and they can just get straight to using the model. And then for our last tip and trick, and this is going to be on the non-graphical side, you can configure your IWP or CWP forms, or really most of your work package forms in O3 to make sure that they're only showing data that's pertinent to your project. And so you'll do this by clicking on the layout icon. It's going to be up here in the top right corner. And then that's going to bring up the option to add or remove fields, to adjust group settings. So you can configure these summary and details forms to show only the data that you need in a format that's digestible to your team. So that is going to be it for our tips and tricks. So we're now going to get into how we can manage actions with team boards and then focus more specifically on the constraint management side. And so those of you that have used team boards before are probably going to be familiar with it mainly on the task management part. So you can create and manage action items with an O3. And for those of you that are not familiar with it, you can actually access team boards by clicking on the 3 bars up here at the top, clicking on teams, and then going to boards. Note that you will need to have permissions to these. So if you can't see anything there, get with your project admin and they can get you set up. So, and back to, managing actions in O3, we can go beyond task management for this. We can actually manage, as you can see here, work package execution tasks, constraints, etc. And we can do this by clicking on the plus sign up here, and then we'll go down to add entities. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose a work package whose actions we want to add to the grid. So in this case, we're going to choose IWP. Then once we do that, we'll see the grid here. We'll choose a work package from this grid. And if we were to do that, we'll see all of its actions added to the team board. Now, there's also some additional filtering that you can do to make everything look very clean and polished. So for example, I'm only showing open actions since there's a bunch of constraints and execution tasks that I've already created or already completed. We can also add constraints to team boards individually as well. So I'm going to click over to a new tab here. And now we're in an IWP form, and we're looking at the constraints tab. And so the way I can add an individual constraint to a team board is by going over here and clicking on the pencil icon. And now that I'm in the constraint form, I can navigate to the team boards field, which you're going to find here. I'll type in my team board, and then I'll click save. And so we'll jump back over to this screen now. And after refreshing my screen, we can see that that constraint has been added. And when I click into it, you'll also notice that the field or the form looks the exact same as it did when we were accessing it from the IWP form. And so this makes it very easy to collaborate on constraints. You can actually edit them and progress them here within team boards, as opposed to having to click into a couple different IWPs or so in order to get that done. And the use case that I wanted to present to you today is actually using O3 to drive a specific part of maybe your weekly construction meeting, for example. So there's going to be multiple different things that you'll discuss. You might discuss the work that's been completed up to this point, work completed last week, work that's on the docket for the following week. But we'll also want to discuss any key concerns and issues that have surfaced on the project since you last met. And so those are probably going to come in the way of mid-execution constraints. So there are certain constraints that you'll want to clear relatively quickly, or else they can present an impediment to your project if they persist. And so that's really where team boards can shine here, for example. So we don't need to, in this case, we don't need to add all of those early project constraints where we're making sure permits are obtained, materials are allocated, etc. There are things that are going to show up midway through the execution of an IWP, and we'll want to have really good visibility into those. And so team boards does that by providing your constraints a centralized place. You can then click into each constraint, as you're going through that portion of your meeting. I do apologize. We're having a little bit of rain over here, so my internet is going to be a little bit spotty. So we can click into a constraint form. We can actually, again, we can progress the constraint here by updating the status, adding any notes to it. We can also go down to the bottom and create any subtasks. So if maybe there are multiple items required to clear this constraint, we can add all of our subtasks here. And then before we officially close out this constraint, we've gone through the trouble of adding it to a team board because it's a bit more important since it's mid-execution. Maybe we want to have an approval in place for this constraint so that someone sees it before the constraint is officially signed off. We can create an approval here, and then they can get approved or submitted and approved. And then also down here at the bottom, we have the comment section. So for example, I could type out a name. In this case, I'll choose my test account. And once I click this green check mark, it's going to send an email notification to, in this case, my email because I used it. And I'm going to get, in this notification, I will see the comment that was made. And it's also going to provide me a link pointing to this constraint. So that way I can go directly to the constraint and see what the update is. So again, not only is it a centralized place, but we're also able to communicate on this constraint so that visibility and awareness is maintained. All right. So we're going to jump back over to our presentation for the final segment, and that's going to be our O3 Toolbox review. And so for those of you who are attending their first O3 Academy gathering, We do already have a set of self-paced dashboards that you can use use to help facilitate your training. These dashboards are really designed, or they're self-paced, so of course your users can go through them at their own leisure. But also they're really designed to help give them the basics. So that way, they can do this at their own pace. After that, they would attend ideally a follow-up session where you can address any questions they might have had. And then this sets them up nicely to go to their more targeted training based on their role. And we currently offer self-paced dashboards for basics, as you can see. So this is getting them primed and ready to go in the system. Dashboards that show you how to dashboard in O3, manage actions in team boards, do work packaging, constraint management, etc. So some of the new dashboards we have now are going to be importing data into O3. So this is targeted at really your data managers, people that will be overseeing data that's going into and out of the system. And so this will show them how they can import data into O3, how they can set up their import files, and then also how they can utilize our data deliverables section, which is very good if you have recurring imports that you need to make. It'll track who needs to make the import, when the import was last made, and then also when the next import needs to be made. And then we also have some new articles in our Help Center. So again, for those of you who are attending for the first time, we have a Help Center that has tons of articles in it geared to help you, get more familiar with O3 at your own pace. And so we've now added articles that focus on the model and how you can use the model to build work packages and visualize data. And you can also access these articles. So we're going to go back to O3 here briefly. So you're going to see a question mark up here in the top right corner. We'll click on that. That's going to bring us to our Help Center. You can either search for articles up here at the top by keyword. So for example, I could type in models, and this is going to pull up all of our models articles. Or if we go back, we also group them by collection. So you can see there's multiple different collections here, one for O3 Basics, one for Constraint Management. Then if you go down here to the bottom, we'll have one for our new models section. All right, and that is going to conclude our presentation. Now, I know some of you might have questions that you'd like to ask, and you'll be able to do so by going to www.o3.solutions. And when you get there, you're going to see our home page. And the way you'll want to get in touch with us is you'll actually click on this icon down in the bottom right corner. This is our support channel. And so once you click on that, you can type in this message, you can type in your question here, and we'll have someone on our support team who's on the other side who will be able to help you get the information that you need. All right. So I want to go ahead and thank everybody for their time. Thank you so much for attending today's session. We will be sending out info on our next gathering, which you can expect to be towards the end of Q3, at the end of September. But in the meantime, I did want to leave you with a really quick quote before we adjourn, and that is going to be learn continually. There's always one more thing to learn. That's going to be by Steve Jobs and is especially applicable to O3 because we are constantly improving our product. We're constantly releasing new features intended to enhance your experience there. So thank you again, and I hope everybody has a great day and a great rest of the week.